Welcome to Lancaster Vineyard. My name's Joel Seymour, one of the pastors here. Welcome to our December 27th service. So glad to have you. We're going to worship here in just a few moments, but before we do, each of us has a message for you.
Yeah, we just want to say thank you to some folks just during this COVID era. So for me, I'm just thankful for our teens who continue to engage through this process. I'm thankful for parents, bringing your teens back to youth group when we had in-person youth group. And also just thankful for my youth sponsors who, again, showed up on Zoom calls and that sort of thing to invest in our youth during this difficult time.
And I want to thank you kids for staying engaged, whether it be on online services, kids services, and even coming to junior worship in a big old tent in the back of the church property. Also, thank you to the parents for all the extra effort you did in discipling your kids so well at home. And to our volunteers, thank you so much for all that you do and have done this year in these trying and crazy times, and having junior worship and preschool and toddler and infant rooms, and trying to make sure those kids stay as physically distanced as possible in those times, yet still having a lot of fun and learning about Jesus.
And I want to thank our staff, these two, as well as others that aren't here, just have done a great job, and all of our volunteers, the guys that are behind the cameras now that were able to do a whole lot of work this COVID era to make sure we had a good online presence. I want to thank all the volunteers that helped us get back in person, all of you who stayed engaged, whether you're watching online or whether you've come to services, and for your faithful generosity that's allowed us to do a ton of stuff, from outreaches to just keeping things going to reaching more people with the gospel of Christ. Thank you for all of that. And before we begin worship, the three of us have a message. We simply want to say, thank you, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year.
Walking around these walls, I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, for you have never failed me yet.
Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness, and I'm still in your hands. This is my confidence, you've never failed me yet.
I know the night won't last, your word will come to pass. My heart will sing your praise again. Jesus, you're still enough. Keep me within your love. My heart will sing your praise again.
Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, faithfulness.
I'm still in your hands.
This is my confidence, you've never failed. Your promise still stands, great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness.
I'm still in your hands.
want you once more. We want to be a part of your story. God of our mothers and fathers, send your glory unto your sons and daughters. What you were back then, come and be again. We want to see your power in our presence, in our time and in our day. Come and move in this place. Come and move, God. Move, God. Move, God, in this place. God of our mothers and fathers, send your spirit just like you promised. You can have your way, visit us today. We want to see your power in our presence, in our time and in our day. Come and move in this place, in our time and in our day. Come and move in this place. Come and move, God. Move, God. Move, God, in this place. God of our mothers and fathers, come be our God. God of our mothers and fathers, come be our God. Come take the vineyard you planted and make us new wine. God of our mothers and fathers, come be our God. God of our mothers and fathers, come be our God. Come take the vineyard you planted and make us new wine.
There's a lot of things that we have to do with our money. We have to pay our bills. We have to pay our taxes. We have to buy groceries. And those things aren't all bad. Well, taxes, still up in the air. I don't know about you, but I don't get a lot of personal satisfaction from spending my paycheck on those types of things. They are necessities. You got to do it, but it's not like I'm smiling when I pay the power bill. But every now and then I get to do something with my money. A little present I buy for my kids just because. Taking my wife out to a nice dinner for our anniversary. Helping someone in need. That's how I feel when I give to God through the ministry of this church. I don't feel like I have to give. I feel like I get to give. And when I give freely by choice, as I've decided to do, that gives me so much satisfaction. I may not feel much when I pay bills online, but when I give to this church or to our end of the year Christmas offering, I know I'm choosing to do something eternally good with my money. Giving is a sign of faith and trust, but it also provides great satisfaction. Truly, I've never regretted $1 I've given to this church. So go ahead and choose to give right now using one of the 6 ways to give. You'll be taking the opportunity to give to something that makes a difference. You have the opportunity to give generously to a church that is doing good in this community. If you want to give above and beyond your normal offering, then go ahead and give to our Christmas offering for Connection West by going to connection.lancastervineyard.org.
I'm so glad to be attending my small group on this fine evening in January.
Yeah, and it was really helpful to find you guys at smallgroups.lancastervineyard.org.
And it's good that we can choose to meet on Zoom here or in person.
Youth Group and Kids Club will resume January 13th at 7 p.m. On January 3rd, we're back for both in-person and live streaming services at 9 a.m. and 10:30 a.m. Join us as we begin a new series, The Greatness of the Gospel, as we learn that the gospel is always relevant, always transformative, and is always our central message.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Phil and Johnny, don't you just love Christmas?
Oh, it's the best. Favorite day of the year.
That's right. Well, Phil, what was your favorite part of Christmas this year?
My favorite part is Christmas caroling. The best way to spread Christmas cheer is singing loud for all to hear. I'm singing! I'm in a lobby and I'm singing!
That's special. Johnny, how about you? What's your favorite part of Christmas?
Is that part of the script?
Johnny, you look awful happy.
I like smiling. Smiling's my favorite.
Okay, well, good. Well, hey, I think I'm going to make you smile because Santa Joel has some gifts for you. So here you go.
This better be a PS5.
Ooh, it's a small one, but yeah. Open those things up, boys. You've been so good this year.
It's
Another present.
More wrapping.
Another one. You tricked us.
I did.
You tricked us.
This Santa's awful funny.
Oh, what does this say?
an unmarked box.
Another unmarked box.
That's taped closed.
I think Joel loves me more, so mine's gonna be better than yours.
It's got
Paper? Oh, Joel.
paper.
Thanks, man. You shouldn't have. You really shouldn't have.
That's kind of disappointing.
Well,
I hate Christmas!
what'd you expect? It's 2020. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. We tried to have a little fun, but 2020 did throw some curveballs, and certainly the year did not end the way we hoped, nor the way we expected when we started the year. And so I want to take a few moments and interview Phil and Johnny and just ask them a couple questions. We did have some challenges this year. What was like your hardest challenge of the year, and then how did you handle it? So Johnny, what was your hardest challenge and how did you handle it?
I think
as I think through it, the hardest challenge we obviously went through wasn't even really COVID related. It was an unexpected tragedy that our family faced with the loss of my wife's sister. And so that was definitely not something we expected, and we are still going through the grieving process of that, especially around Christmas. It's been a little difficult, and I think through that, the way we handled it, I mean, obviously is just, I think community has been a huge part of helping us just go through that, and being connected with friends and family has definitely made a huge difference with that. And then the second thing, obviously, that's not really COVID related and kind of was really specific to just our family. But on the other side, just the COVID stuff, the challenges with COVID and what we had to navigate through there is, I think one for me was just managing expectations and trying to let go of expectations. Kind of, I'm a little bit of a go-getter, trying to get things done, and there was reality. If I'm working from home and I'm trying to watch 3 kids, my expectations for the day had to be very lowered of just getting through the day and not and surviving and making sure I'm just present with my kids and that sort of thing, and just realizing to just knowing my limits, what I can do, what I can't do, and just trying to surrender to those. Sometimes I'd often try to push those limits as much as I could, but obviously those days didn't end well, and so just kind of recognizing my limits as far as what I could do in a day helped in that process, helped with that challenge.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about COVID is like it made normal things harder,
Yeah.
and then when you go through something tragic like you all went through, it makes that even more difficult.
Sure.
Planning, getting together with people, all the things, just going to the hospital and visiting is hard. So, yeah, it's been a hard year, but definitely I can tell community's been helpful to you. Phil, how about you? What was your hardest challenge of the year?
Like what you just said, normal things were all made harder. And for me, one of the hardest things that I had to deal with this year was just making decisions. Decision making as a whole became outrageously difficult. Something as simple as, can your kids come over and play? Well, normally it'd be like, oh yeah, that's fine, go, let's take you over and let's play. But with COVID, it's like, you gotta weigh every little thing, whether the kids do sports, extracurricular activities, like all of those things, what once were easy decisions to be made were all of a sudden really difficult and really challenging, as well as just decisions here at church, how to proceed and how to go about church and what's the best way, how do we do things safely but still do what we're called to do as a church. It's just really, really challenging, and so making decisions became really hard. I feel like the best way that I was able to handle that really was just through a lot of prayer, a lot of talking, a lot of discussions and collaborations with the 3 of us and with everybody else that we can, and just working together and having those conversations and hard conversations and being in agreement with each other and how to move forward.
Yeah, and the hard thing about the decisions is there's definitely some outlier things that are right and wrong. So there's definitely some black and whites. But boy, I think when it comes to this year, there's a whole lot in the middle that each family has to decide, each person has to decide. It just makes it tough. But as you were talking, I was reminded of Proverbs says, with many counselors, plans succeed. And so just praying, obviously using Jesus as a counselor, but also just friends, co-workers, planning. It works out, so that's good. But it's not all doom and gloom, though. We've all had our challenges this year, obviously, but there's actually been some good things that we've seen. So what are 1 or 2 good things you all have seen come out of this year?
Yeah, I've just been blown away at how, even in the hard times and the hard conversations and difficult challenges that we faced, that how well we just worked together and collaborated. And it was just amazing and impressive to see how we all came together, not just the 3 of us, but all the staff, and even wider, all the volunteers who stepped up, especially in kids ministry, to last minute do stuff, take on kids ministry in a new way, an inventive way, in a way that we've never done before, and being flexible and adaptable. And even when we came back into the building for in-person services, to maintain some level of children's ministry, even though it was smaller and less, but like all the volunteers for children's ministry just really stepped up, as well as throughout the rest of the church, and just seeing how everybody came together to work together to still do what we're called to do as a church, and minister to people and minister the gospel to our community.
It was strange, like even that first, what must have been about 10 weeks, I think, before we all were together in the same room again as a staff. And even doing Zoom meetings and Zoom staff meetings and all, it did seem like even as we collaborated and worked together, we grew closer, even though it was awkward because we weren't in the same room, we're looking at a screen, but yet the Lord really did draw us together, so it was good. Johnny, how about you? What's one good thing you've seen come out of this year?
You know, I was thinking about this, and through everything, obviously we've all experienced suffering and just experienced some sort of just wrestling or normal lives were totally disrupted. But I think in the midst of suffering, in the midst of hard times, I know for me, those are opportunities to really grow and be formational in our faith. And so for me, as I look back, I look back at the first couple months, and it was really hard. I was looking through my journals, and I'm kind of lamenting to God and just really struggling just with these things. But then again, I was able to build some sort of rhythms in my day-to-day life, just asking some questions to start the day of, like, even things of just these practices of gratitude, just writing out things that I'm thankful for, just creating these moments of just some silence and solitude with the Lord, creating these rhythms of just even Sabbath with my family, just taking these days. And so as I look back, this was an opportunity in the midst of a really hard time. It was also really a formational time, I think, in my relationship with Jesus, of just going to a new depth and communion and intimacy with Him, and that I don't know if I would have otherwise, if everything could have stayed, if 2020 would have stayed the same. I think it's in those difficult times that I could look back and see that the shaping and formation that Jesus did. So, yeah.
Good. Well, thank you all. You know, it's important to name the challenges that we've had, as well as find the right place to put our hope for the good that can come out of all this. And so, to explore that deeper, I just want to take a few moments and share a devotional thought. Well, Phil and Johnny, thank you for sharing. You know, 2020 has been an extraordinary year, and it's been a year of loss. I mean, you think about it, we're at 300,000 people have lost their lives, and we're not just talking like people that are just older, but we're talking about young folks, and we're not talking about people who are just out there. We know people in our own church who have lost loved ones unexpectedly to this disease. I know my daughter has had 2 classmates who have lost their dads, one 36 and one 51 years old. And so this hits home, and not only does it hit home from a physical health standpoint, it hits home on a financial standpoint. So many people have suffered economic loss this year. And then we have people who have suffered relational loss. I mean, think about it. Weddings have been missed. Funerals have been missed. Graduations have been missed. It has been a tough year. And there is just an unmet hunger for community. We've missed just hanging out with friends, which has been so tough. You know, on top of that, we have suffered this year seeing the deep wounds of racism. Some unarmed black men that were shot, and then we had several incidences on video, kind of heightened by just the killing of George Floyd, and that stoked something in us. And I know we saw the pain of our black friends, both in one-on-one conversations. You know, I've had several one-on-one conversations with black men who are friends of mine. We saw that pain in those conversations. We saw pain obviously erupt into our streets. And then, I also have police officer friends, friends who attend here at the Vineyard, just great men who serve and protect our community. And so they were distraught at seeing what had happened to these men, but also they were distraught at being lumped into people that others saw as corrupt, because they're not that way. And so there's just all this pain around that issue that still has not been worked out and still needs healed in our land. And then we went through the fall and saw just a contentious election that never seemed to end. And in the midst of all that, we have went through this period of deconstructionism. We have deconstructed institutions, family, government, democracy, religion, science, and I'm afraid we're going to be left with nothing. And so this has been an extremely hard year. Now, there's always an impulse in these moments to say it wasn't as bad as it seems. This seems to go with humans ever since we were created. When we face darkness, we tend to go to one extreme or the other. We either jump in full fear mode and just crawl into a corner, or we go the other extreme and just say, oh, it's not bad, and we just deny reality. You know, there's plenty of examples of that in the history of the people of God. In fact, in one piece of history, when the people of God were about to be exiled to Babylon, their city, Jerusalem, their country, Israel and Judah, was surrounded by the Babylonian armies, and yet the people of God just kept saying, nah, it's not as bad as it seems. In fact, their leaders, their political leaders and the religious leaders, were some of the worst at this. We see this in Jeremiah chapter 6, where leaders are saying, peace, peace, it's going to be okay, everything's going to work out. And at the very end, in verse 14, we see the leaders say, they offer superficial treatments for my people's mortal wounds. You know, unlike our Christianese, happy clappy Christian talk, God actually invites us to be real and to name our pain and name what's going on in our lives. He never asks us to deny suffering. We've been so shocked this year by all that's happened. Our brains have tried to figure out how to handle it. You know, in the beginning, we're saying, just 2 to 3 weeks, this will be over. And then the shock hits us that it's not going to be that way. And so many people have said things like, well, COVID is just like the flu. Don't give in to fear. Or racism isn't pervasive. It's just a few isolated incidences. Or no Thanksgiving, no Christmas. That's okay. I didn't want to see my crazy cousin Eddie anyway. We've just tried to deny the pain that we're going through. And yet God never asks his people to do that. We can actually name the challenges we faced and name the suffering that we faced. Sometimes we do recognize the trauma and the drama we've gone through, but we effectively deny the pain by just getting real busy and simply just move, and not actually stop and process what we're going through. And yet Jesus didn't do that. When Jesus' best friend Lazarus dies, he goes to the funeral, he stands in front of the tomb, and he weeps. As he marches in on a donkey into Jerusalem, he sees the city and he cries for the city because he knows the very people he's come to save have rejected him. He weeps for them. He also knows in 40 short years their city would be decimated by the Romans, and he weeps over the suffering that he can see happening in the future. So this week, as you approach the crossroads of 2020 to 2021, carve out some time and simply acknowledge the pain and the loss and the suffering, even the frustrations you've had this past year. Reflect on 2020. Sit quietly before the Lord and name what you have went through, what has made it difficult. Even if you haven't suffered greatly, just whatever frustrations you've had, get that stuff up and out and give it to the Lord and name it before the Lord and pray to him about those challenges. Confess any sinful ways you've tried to deal with the challenges. This week between Christmas and New Year's is a great time to sit and reflect and be honest about what you've experienced in 2020. Now, after you spend time reflecting and naming, like the Lord wanted his people to do in the first half of Jeremiah 6, I want you to do something else. I want you to begin to have hope, but place your hope in the right thing. Or maybe I should say, place your hope in the right person. In Jeremiah chapter 6, we see this, that once God has his people's attention, he says this in Jeremiah 6:16, he says, this is what the Lord says, stand at the crossroads and look. Ask for the ancient paths. Ask where the good way is and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. Friends, we stand at this crossroad of 2020 and 2021. We stand at a crossroads in the midst of the turmoil, in the midst of all the struggle, all the grasping for solutions, all the grasping for something or someone to hold on to. And at this crossroads, we have a choice to follow the ancient path that so few people follow, or to try to work this thing out on our own. Some of us will try some habits to try to gain some limited amount of peace. Some of us will try addictions to find peace. Some will try to soothe their pain just by coming up with creativity and just we're going to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps and look to American ingenuity to solve our problems. On the other side is the ancient path. On one side, we grit our teeth and say, I can make it through this, I can make it through this, and depend on our own strength. On the other side is the ancient path. What is the ancient path, you ask? It is nothing less than the good news of Jesus Christ. Listen to Romans 1:16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, because it is the power of God that brings salvation for everyone who believes. What is going to bring salvation and wholeness and healing to our lives? It is the gospel. It is the good news of Jesus Christ. It's the power that will save us and make us whole. As Phil Strout, the national director of Vineyard, puts it, for followers of Jesus, faced with a myriad of options available to us for how we can proceed in advancing the cause of Christ in our towns and cities, we will have to come to grips again with the gospel. Therapy is beneficial. Activism is important. Love flowing from the heart and compassion one person to another has great merit. But therapy can't ultimately bring the heart to the place of utter, complete freedom unless the power at work behind the therapy is the gospel, the good news, the person of Jesus Christ. And this is being said by someone who's benefited from world-class therapy. Yet know this, I do not confuse the powerful technician with the only one and great physician. The most energetic activism will have impact, yet that impact will be far lesser and shorter term unless the gospel embodied in people and plans fuels the reconciliation of the human heart to God, to oneself, and to the world. Our greatest efforts to love one another, motivated by compassion or altruism, will find themselves failing to solve the inner quest of the love-starved heart until that person meets love incarnate in the person of Jesus Christ. And what does the heart-transforming power of the gospel have to do with our mental and emotional health, our faithful activism, and our compassionate acts of service? The gospel changes not only the heart that is healed, it changes and loves in that moment that a person has an encounter with Jesus Christ. The gospel also changes the impact of the heart on our relationships, in society, in every arena of human living as we know it, impacting generations to come. Love lasts longer, compassion goes deeper, and change endures when sustained by the intrinsic power and presence of Christ in our lives. We stand at the crossroads, my friend. Who and what will we trust in 2021? We are being called to the ancient path, to the narrow road, the way of Jesus, the way of the gospel, the good news. What is the gospel exactly? Martin Munzer and Tom Wright put it this way. The gospel is the good news that God intervened on behalf of humanity in the person of Jesus Christ. The gospel rests upon the history of Jesus Christ, his birth, obedient life, atoning death, physical resurrection from the dead, and his ascension into heaven. In the end, he will set all things right as it was intended. Starting next week, we're going to do a deep dive into the gospel. We'll learn that the gospel is always relevant, always transformative, and always our central message. We'll spend a few weeks after that in the gospel of wholeness, learning how we can be transformed from the sins that we've committed and the sins that have been committed against us. And we're going to spend the time of Lent later on in the spring, preparing for Easter, by looking at stories in the gospel of Jesus of people who were transformed by Jesus himself. But for now, let's pause at this crossroads of 2020 and 2021. Let's reflect on how this year has been hard. Let's name our losses and our pain before the person of Jesus as we pray this week. But let us also look forward and choose the ancient path before us, to trust that the gospel of Jesus is what's going to get us through 2021. And it's not only going to transform our lives, but but as we share the gospel, it's going to transform the lives of people around us. Let us choose to walk that path, that ancient road, in 2021. Join me in prayer. Jesus, I thank you for those watching today, and my prayer is they will spend this week reflecting on the pain and the loss that they've suffered in 2020, even reflecting on their frustrations, but I pray also they will choose to put their hope not in their preferred political system, not in their own upbringing, not even in just their own strength to grit their teeth and get themselves through this. I pray they would choose to put their hope in the gospel of Jesus, the good news that Christ has come, he is here, and he is coming again. And he is here to transform our lives, to transform our 2021. In the strong and mighty name of Jesus, I pray. Amen. Peace to you, my friends. Well, folks, we hope you have enjoyed this service. Our goal was to bring you some joy along with some laughs, to give you some encouragement, but also to help us process all that we've been through this last year. And yet to process it with a sense of hope that Christ conquers all, the gospel is our hope, and we can go into 2021 with a sense that God is on the move. And we have one last message for you. Happy New Year, and see you next week. Peace out.